Hello my friends and welcome to another Whiskey Review with me, the Whiskey Novice. Thank you for joining me for review number 186. This is the third part of my series looking at some blended malts. And it is the turn of Big Peat from Douglas Laing. I'm sort of surprised that I hadn't reviewed this. It was weird. I was convinced, because I've had this in my collection for quite a while. It's not long for this earth, as you can see. And I was convinced I'd reviewed it at one point before, but I checked back and it turned out I hadn't. Big Peat, part of their remarkable regional malts. That's the one, marvellous, remarkable. You know where I'm going with that. Big Peat. And this one, their Islay, part of that collection. So there's 6 of them in total. They're including the islands as part of that Remarkable Regional Malts series. So 6 of them in total. This one, the Islay one, and it's taken. It says on it that there's malts in here, including those from Ardbeg, Colilla, Bamore, Port Ellen, etc. That'll not be all of them, etc. And you can believe me when I tell you there'll not be an awful lot of Port Ellen in this. This bottled at 46%, non-chill filtered, no colour added. So it's right in there where we like it. It's right in our sweet spot. And it's been around a while. Big Peat, I always think of Big Peat as being almost, and I could be wrong, maybe everybody thinks different, the signature bottle from the Remarkable Regional Malts series. When I think of that series, Big Peat's always the first one I think of. As I said, maybe it's just me. Let's get into this, shall we? Some slightly off, as in it's just gone off fruit and ashtray. Barbecue burnt ends. New rubber, as in new, like a new car tire. Or if you go to get tires, they're very, very specific smell. And for somebody who worked in a car tire factory for 18 years, trust me, I know the smell. I'll never forget it. There's a sourness in this. There's a slight sourness in this. And I'm struggling to put my finger on what it is, but it's just there all the time. Elastic bands. It's just bizarre. Just behind all the smokiness and that slight off fruit note, there's just this sour note there. It's a funky thing. Orange peel, sulphur. Well, there is a freshness to it. There is definitely a freshness to it. I said orange peel, lemon, or lemon juice, definitely. This is one now I don't say it too often. It's a salty and sour delivery here. This is firing off that salty section of the mat of the tongue. It's quite creamy, and a bit vegetative, but because it's firing off all that on the salty section of the mat of the tongue, it's also, although it's creamy, it also goes dry very quick, or feels dry. And it just seems to run to the side of the palate. Sharp, citrusy, smoky, yes, but it's not an earthy smoke. It's not a clean smokiness. It's just there. It's a bit confused, a bit muddled. Yeah, as I said, creamy, but still feels a little thin. There are, yeah, there's definitely more of that citrus coming through in the palate. Takes a while, but it's there. I think it's a bit confused, as I said. Nothing wants to stand out here. Now, I know we prefer, I certainly would, if something's going to be blended, let's face it, they're all blended, you know, to an extent. So you don't necessarily want anything to stand out, but you still want flavours to stand out. You still want something to say, taste me. Here, it's all just a bit, it's more about senses rather than flavours. So I said about bitterness, or about citrus. Yeah, citrus is there. But that salty thing's still going on. Just doesn't want anything to jump out and say, taste this. The finish is sort of dry, it's short. Now, you and I know that where smoky whiskies are concerned, there's no such thing, there's generally no such thing as a short finish on a smoky whiskey. It's hanging around for days, and that's part of the what we like about it. And here, it just, the smokiness doesn't hang around. It's one of the first things that disappears, actually, and you're just left with this very sort of short, quite weird, off-putting flavour in the back of your tongue. You can maybe tell that this ain't going well. I'm going to add a little drop of water, not an awful lot, 3 drops. I don't like what's going on in the back of my palate there at all. It's gone sort of bitter. Just not very nice. Now, it's become that drop of water. Give it a chance to settle, obviously. Becomes a bit creamier in the nose, a bit more balanced, a bit more settled. Less rubbery. But there's still something a bit sour about it. There's a hint of peanut in there. Charred wood and a charred marshmallow. You know, when you're burning marshmallow. Burnt marshmallow. You know, whenever it goes that, you've taken it too far over a barbecue or whatever. Palate still sort of sharp, citrusy. Not much changes about the finish. Look, I'm not terribly glowing about this. Big Peat can be summed up very, very easily by saying it's not as good as the sum of its parts. Ardbeg, Kalila, Bowmore, maybe Port Ellen, and more. Any one of them on their own is a better drink than this. Is a better whiskey than what's going on here. This just does not work for me. Big Peat has never worked for me. This standard one, I haven't really tried any of the aged Big Peats or any of the funky ones, different finishes on them, etc. I've only ever had this one. And it's never worked for me. I've always thought the same thing every time I've come back to it. Not as good as the sum of its parts. The same can be said for some of the other remarkable regional malts, in my opinion. Some of them work, some of them don't. I'm not a huge fan. I said it before in this series, the Goldens does not work for me one bit. The Epicurean, which is the Lowland one, yes and no. The one that really has always stood out for me, and I know that Timorous Beastie and the other one with the dog on it, I know they're good, they are good. The one that I've always really liked was the Rock, well, it was Rock Oyster actually, before it was Rock Island. And the Rock Oyster batch 2 was just phenomenal. Rock Island, I've had a couple of them, different finishes, etc. Cast strength, still good. I still think they work. Big Peat just does not work for me. Doesn't work, never has, don't think ever will. So we'll leave it at that. So therefore, what would I suggest as an alternative? Well, I could have went down the path, and I thought about going down the path of Compass Box Peat Monster. But it, to me, is the same as Big Peat. It's not as good as the sum of its parts. So, therefore, look to the parts is the way is what I'm going to suggest to you. Don't try to find another blended malt that is. If you like Big Peat, if Big Peat's your thing, what I'm going to say is go out and get yourself one of those Ardbeg, Bemore, maybe. The one that I am actually going to suggest. Go out and get yourself an indie bottling of Kalila. Now, don't get me wrong. Official bottlings of Kalila, the 18, love it, absolutely love it. 12-year-old, still a classic. Problem with them being the prices are just starting to go up. This, as you can see, Scotch Malt Whiskey Society, SMWS. This is a bottling of Kalila called Stir Fried Peat, a 10-year-old. Now, they'll come and go. They're pretty much, you'll find a lot of them, you'll find an awful lot of indie bottlings of Kalila out there because they're one of the only distilleries on Islay that tend to sell off, Diageo tend to sell off casks to indie bottlers of Kalila. It is far, far superior to buying blended malts from Islay, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's some great ones out there. I haven't tried one yet. I think just stick to Islay as it in individual distilleries. And Kalila is a damn good example of a good one. So, yeah, if it were me, that's what I would just be doing. I would forget about the blended malts from Islay and just stick with good single malts from Islay and look toward maybe, in some cases, the indie bottlers. Don't get me wrong, Ardbeg, Port Ellen, fantastic. But this is a blend, just... It's not bad, but it's not good either. It's not good enough. So I'll leave it at that. Say thank you for joining me. Thank you very, very much to my patrons. Should you wish to join that group, the details are in the video description below. I'll be back the next time with something else blended in a bottle. Till then, look after yourselves. Here's your good health. Cheers. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Please click and subscribe to be notified of further content.